Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Quentin Q. Crisco, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce, bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
Welcome back to Bears on Tap. My name is Quentin Crisco. I am joined by Mr. Ron Luce. Ron, it has been a minute. How are you doing this fine evening?
Dude, I'm doing good. It has been a minute. I feel like I've unfortunately had to bow out of the last couple of shows that you and Sonny did. So it feels good to be back talking Bears football. I think it also feels a little sweeter being back on this episode because training camp has started and football's right around the corner, man. I'm excited. How are you doing, my friend? You've been traveling the world for the last couple of weeks.
I'm doing wonderful, man. I got out to touch some grass, ended up in Scotland somehow, and saw some hairy cows, saw some sheep out there. I posted some of it on Twitter, talking about all trying to put football references within it. But yeah, it was a great trip out to Scotland. Good to see the nature out there, go on some hikes, go see some history as well. Rebel against the British a little bit, but that's a common trait that us Americans and Scottish have together, that rebellious streak. But we're here to talk football now. And Ron, I guess we want to get to position battles here. That's like that is the title, the kind of purpose of this episode. But before we get to it, I think we should talk a little bit about some of the goings on with what's been happening these first 2 days of camp with the Bears. And specifically, there's one thing I want to get on that Mark Potash wrote a pretty pointed article about Ryan Poles today for his decision to not take questions from the media, and then a day later do a private segment for Hogan Johns where they could ask any questions they wanted. How do you think about this, Ron?
I think I don't think I'm as pissed off at it as Potash is. He spoke, right? I mean, he still said something to the media, like Hogan Johns are still part of the media. Just because it's not the greater media. I think a lot of people need to remember these media outlets are competing for these guys and their information just as much as the next, because they're in the same line. They're in a business and they have competitors that they need to, kind of one up in the world of media and sports relations. And I think this is just one of those cases. And maybe Potash was a little pointed because he wasn't able to get anything from Poles, and maybe he had a list of questions for Ryan Poles. I think it's interesting, but at the same time, I'm fine with Ryan Poles not speaking to the general media now. I'll be a little more concerned if he doesn't speak to them between now and like the middle of the preseason. Then I might find some concerns. Until then, I'm not too worried about it. I thought Hogan Johns got some good information out of Poles. Obviously, it was still very tongue in cheek on a lot of things, but overall, I thought it was interesting to hear, a couple of the discussion with like Luther Burden and kind of what went into that draft pick and some of that kind of stuff. I thought that was pretty fascinating. And I don't think you get that in your normal media scrum. So, sometimes you get better information talking one-on-one versus the we'll call it the pit of the media at Hallis Hall. And I think it is what it is. I think the quote machine is there, if we're being brutally honest, right? Like, Ben Johnson's going to give you the good quotes. Ryan Poles has never been a big quote guy to begin with. So that's the long-winded way, Q, of saying I'm not too worried about it. And Mark Potash seems like he might be the old man yelling at the cloud. But what do you think?
Frankly, I don't care if Poles talks or not. I do care about Poles setting certain precedents or like just not, I don't know. It seems like that playing favorites is there. It seems to me like there's a continued lack of communication between the Bears PR staff and the beat writers as to what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be getting, when they're going to be getting it. Like clearly in Potsy's article, he said this has been the standard, that that the GM goes and takes questions at the start of camp. They got no notification that it would be any different. And then it was just different. And to me, it's not so much about Poles talking to me as it is the way the organization gets run. And I think that it's just talking to the media, right? Like, it's not that big a deal, but it's what is allowed to slip within the organization. It's just this, it's just that. Is this going into different operational aspects? Does this type of stuff fly when, Kevin Warren wants to talk to Ryan Poles? Does him just kind of passing it off fly? When Ben Johnson wants to talk to Ryan Poles? It's just, what is the standard for this stuff if it's not the standard? The great Mike Tomlin, the standard is the standard. It doesn't cross circumstances.
Yeah.
What's expected of you. That's not being reached. I don't like to see that. It's not. I hate to make a mountain out of a molehill with it. And you're right. It's probably just Mark Potash shouting at the clouds. But I don't know. I do think there's something there that you're not meeting the standard of what is expected by the media core of you. And that, I don't like to see that.
I think too, right, what you're kind of expressing here is it almost feels like a double standard. And that's not what you want. You don't want to play favorites in the media, because that's how you create enemies. And especially in a market like Chicago, right? This is a top 2 or 3 media market in the country in terms of what people think about their football, especially, again, about the Chicago Bears. Other sports feel that wrath too, but nobody more than the Chicago Bears. So I think you bring up a great point. I really do. I think at the end of the day, it does appear on the surface as favoritism, and that's certainly something that you don't want to start to create a narrative with the media, because that's a snowball that will never stop rolling down the hill as the season goes on.
Right. Yeah. You gotta hold yourself to that standard. You don't become a player like Josh Allen without holding yourself to that standard. So, as we have Jay in the comments begging us to talk about Josh Allen, I had to throw that in there. But anyways, what else is going on with camp? I mean, what do you think about Ben Johnson pulling the starters yesterday after they couldn't figure it out?
Good. I think it was great. And you know what? Oh, and I this is going to sound douchey coming out of my mouth, because I hate being this guy, but you can definitely tell there's segments of this fan base that have never played football before. That's incredibly normal. If you can't get something right, because then Ben Johnson spoke on it today and said, he's like, look, if we're only given 90 minutes to get stuff done, and you fuck up twice, and I need to get 3 other, groups of people reps, I'm gonna throw you out. And that's exactly how it should be. If you can't get it right, they got to keep things moving. And that's what it was. It's not, he hates the first team and he's trying to make an example of them as, hey, you fucked up twice. You had 2 more plays. I need to get these next guys in. Get the fuck out. On to the next one. And that's just what it is. That's practice, man. And the NFL is obviously a little different, because as training camp goes on, they'll have more and more and more time. And you can make the argument that, it's early, so they're just trying to get through what they can get through in a limited amount of time. But as somebody who has been around the college level and continues to be around the college level of football, when you're only given a certain amount of time to work shit in, you got to go quick. And that's just the nature of the beast if you want to get through what is on the agenda. So I thought it was just good too, because that's just also holding guys accountable. It's not, you're not hand holding the first team. It's look, the reps for these second and third team guys are just as important, because they need to be just as ready as you guys do. And if you can't get it right, we got to go to them, because we got to get them to work too.
The standard is the standard. And it does boil down to a little bit of what Potsy said in that article. Ben Johnson needs to change Halas Hall before Halas Hall changes Ben Johnson. Facts. I think that is a good example of it. In one area, the standard's not being met. In a different area, the standard sure as hell is being forced to be met. Otherwise, you're not staying on the football field. And I'm, like you said, I'm for that. I don't think it's a giant deal. I think I think there is a learning curve with this team. We're talking about a team who last year was almost making jokes about how unprepared they were in practice and about how much of a mess it was. At times, you had Keenan Allen saying no one knew what the heck they were doing out there.
Mhm.
And we just went with it. And all the coaches the whole time were talking about how everything is fine and looking good.
Yeah.
If it's not right, I want to hear that it's not right. The players should be hearing that it's not right. The players want to be hearing that it's not right. I guarantee you, because they want to succeed. They don't want to be led down a false path. So I'm here for it. I like that aspect of it.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And Jay, with another Mike Tomlinism, if I got red paint, I'm gonna paint that barn red. That's my favorite one of all time. But let's get some position battles here. So I got the depth charts loosely. These are from a few weeks ago, but loosely here. And Ron, where would you start when talking about position battles for the Bears this year?
Man, it feels like beating a dead horse, Q, but that left tackle battle is so fascinating. And I don't even know. I know that Ben Johnson has word associated Karen Namagaji in this discussion. I don't think he's going to win the job. I do believe, though, there's a world where Ozzy Trapilo can supplant Braxton Jones. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I was listening just briefly to 670 The Score last night, and I didn't catch enough of it to get names of who was on and this, that, and the other. But the discussion at hand was, who's the betting favorite? Who would you bet money on to be the left tackle? And this correspondent that was on said, I would put the house on Braxton Jones because he's still a veteran. He's still a really good left tackle. And this is something you and I have sat here and continually said. Like, Braxton Jones is not a bad offensive lineman. He just gets hurt a lot. And I think he's never been the same player because of that injury he had a few years ago. I still think it's fascinating, though. I want to see where Trapilo is because, they invested high draft capital in Amagaji the prior year in the third round, only to come back the next year and use a second-round pick on Trapilo. And I think that's kind of a fascinating storyline to keep an eye on because you already have Darnell Wright at right tackle. Neither one of those guys are going to supplant him. So it really is kind of a three-headed monster over there at the left tackle spot right now. And again, I think some of that being a position battle also plays into what is Braxton Jones's health. Because if he's not healthy for the regular season, it probably is going to be Ozzy Trapilo in week 1 if Braxton Jones is not 100%. But it seems like everything's pointing him being healthy. And as a result, I would expect him to probably win the job unless Trapilo just has the training camp of the century. But nonetheless, I feel like that position, even as late as week 18 in the season, is going to have a magnifying glass on it when it's all said and done.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you there. I do think Trapilo might make them think a little.
Yeah.
But I believe the more they think, the more they'll sit there and say, well, Braxton knows how to pick up stunts. He knows how to count the blitz. He knows how to find his guy in the run lanes and get the count on the box of who needs to be blocked where and what. He's still a fine offensive tackle. I am curious if last year we saw after they fired the offensive coordinator, after they fired Shane Waldron, we saw Braxton Jones suddenly start trying to be more proactive with his hands, which is a big thing for me. Like, he has shown flashes of being able to be proactive with his hands.
Definitely.
He has never been consistent with it. Like, it's what I mean by that is not that he stops doing it, because he does stop doing it, but he's not consistently winning with it when he does it. It's like 50-50, right? Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't look very pretty when he is trying to be proactive with his hands. What I mean by that is making that first contact. I'm sure anyone who's watched a lot of Braxton Jones has seen a lot of the, they're in my chest.
It's a lot of catching.
Yeah. I do believe that was a Chris Morgan trait or a Chris Morgan lesson. They were teaching something that way. I don't understand why, but the fact that as soon as there was a change, that changed made me think that there was something more to it there. So if this staff is getting him to be more proactive with his hands, I think there's a chance he runs away with this battle of Ozzy just gets the luxury of learning. I do think Ozzy is a strong prospect. I just think the odds of the veteran who already knows so much NFL stuff with, as I said, stunts, blitzes, run counts, he knows it in and out already. So that's going to be hard to beat out in my mind.
Definitely. I agree wholeheartedly. I think you're 100% spot on. I think, again, right, like you said, it's the consistency factor with Braxton. If he can be more consistent with that punch, he's got the long arms. Like, there's no major concern about the body of the player.
It's mind-blowing. When you have 35-inch arms to not be and a poor anchor, that you're not being proactive with your hands. Like, I do know his punch isn't exactly the fastest. Like, he does, his hands aren't quick, but when he does land it first, it's like he wins that rep.
Oh yeah, every single time. And we saw that a lot on film, I think, down the stretch too late in the season. So I agree with you, Q. I think, the left tackle battle is certainly one. Q, I have another one, but I'm curious if you have one that you want to share first and see if we're on the same page here.
We talking Bill Murray versus Jonah Jackson? No, I'm kidding. I have one that I think is interesting, and it's not one that anyone would expect to be discussed this early in the show, I think. Ooh. But Luther Burden versus Olamide Zaccheaus.
We're on the same page. That was mine.
Zaccheaus had close to 600 yards last year for Washington. He was a quality player as a slot receiver there, and they're competing for the same role. Zaccheaus didn't sign here to sit on the bench. Like he signed here before the draft, and I believe before the draft. Yeah, before the draft, and he wants to get play time. Luther Burden is not practicing right now. That means Zaccheaus is getting opportunities to impress the coaching staff, to learn the playbook, to get chemistry with Caleb Williams. I do think that Luther Burden is losing opportunities the longer that he's out with injury. I mean, I had questions about how legitimate his injury was before the contract was signed. Now, I do fully believe it's legitimate. I don't know why he would be doing this to himself if it wasn't. But I do think he's getting put at a disadvantage by missing this time.
Most definitely. And I think on top of that, too, especially for a player like Luther Burden, like when you're in college and you're at Missouri, you are the focal point of the offense, right? You're not being asked to block like Ben Johnson asks his receivers to block very much. Not saying never, but not very much. Zaccheaus has been around long enough where he knows how to play receiver in the NFL. He knows if you want to get on the field, you got to be able to block, especially if you're playing in the slot, because you're going to be asked to come in motion. You're going to be asked to be around the line of scrimmage at times. There is a real possibility that, Burden would have benefited from those reps just to get used to what it's like to block NFL corners, and we all know what the athlete is in Luther Burden, but it's like you said, it's learning the playbook. It's developing that chemistry with Caleb Williams. Olamide Zaccheaus has every opportunity now, like you said, to run away with that third receiver position. And not to say we're not going to see Luther Burden on the field at points this season, but I agree with you, Q, in the sense I think a lot of people are underselling that, like, Zaccheaus is not just here to be a warm body. Like, he is going to get playing time. So much so, Q. Have you ever seen those the Madden simulations on YouTube where they go through the whole schedule and it's every game? I watched the Bears-Vikings one for the opening game of the season, and you know who scored the opening season touchdown? Olamide Zaccheaus. So who knows, man? I'm right there with you. That was the other one that is intriguing to me because just the more and more time you see Luther Burden lose on the field, the more and more that I think Zaccheaus has a stranglehold on that wide receiver 3 position until Burden proves otherwise.
And man, I gotta tell you, I didn't watch a ton of Luther Burden before the draft. Receivers wasn't one of my positions, and it's a position that, frankly, I'm not great with. But I've watched some more lately just to get a feel for the player. And, like, I'm just bringing this up because I've never actually talked about it that much on a show. I'm kind of perplexed with the player. Like, he's really good, right? He's really shifty. He's great with the football in his hands. Outstanding with the football in his hands. His agility is extremely impressive, and his explosiveness is boom. Like, he flies out of his first step. But I don't think he's as fast as his time. He gets caught a lot from behind on his runs, and just there's like it's a weird aspect. Like, he ran a 4.4 140. I don't think that he's 4.41 in pad. Like, I don't think that that's his. I think he's quite a bit slower in pads Still extremely explosive, still just as explosive as any testing probably. But the long speed, it was interesting to me to watch because I almost feel like he has short strides, maybe shorter legs, because it feels like his foot speed is going faster than he is. Like when I'm watching him, it's just an interesting aspect that makes him a little bit different than a lot of players I've really seen. So many wide receivers are long striders. You don't see a lot of short striding guys who really, carve out big roles in the NFL. And there is an advantage to being a short strider. It makes you shiftier, right? Like you can cut quicker because you're not having to interrupt your stride as often to change direction. Right. Like you think like a guy like Tariq Cohen had a short stride, obviously different position, but he was so shifty, and it was part of why he was so shifty. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's been on my mind. Yeah, Taylor Gabriel, another good example.
Was another Bears example. That's an easy one to tie it back to. I mean, and to your point, right? Like Steve Smith made a career in the NFL as a shorter strider. He was a small receiver, but I agree with you that is one of the things that I've noticed too with Burden is I think that could give him the opportunity to be a really good route runner as well, because he's able to make those quick cuts on a dime a lot easier. And it's a lot easier for him to stay within the framework of his body. And what I mean by that, like for anybody at home that's not sure, receivers are taught when they break, you want to be within the box of your body, because if you're trying to break or cut outside of your frame, that's when injuries happen. That's when guys tear ACLs. That's when ankles get rolled. You know, everything's inside the framework of your body, so that way you can keep that force and that balance all together in your, essentially your center of gravity. But short leg guys are a lot easier to do that. So he could become a guy where I think in year one, especially Q, where he's still learning how to play in the NFL. Like that dude to me is like the king of the bubble. You know what I mean? King of the bubble screen, king of maybe the middle screen if you want to get really creative. The guy maybe that's coming around and taking the hook on the hook and ladder, since we've seen Ben Johnson pull that out of his bag of cards. I think you're going to see him in a lot of what I'll call quote unquote, I don't want to use the term gadget situations because that's not quite the right word, but more targeted situations where it's like, hey, we're just trying to get the ball in Luther's hands here and let him do something.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I think Ben Johnson will have as many gadget plays as Luther Burden can handle as long as he's on the practice field learning them. Like he's that kind of player, I believe, where they'll put him in the backfield. They'll put him in the slot. They'll put him out wide. They'll put him at fullback at times, I'm sure. Like they'll put him everywhere as long as he can handle it. And him being on the field is a big part of him handling it.
Most definitely. And the best ability is availability. And every day that Luther Burden misses practice, the more and more concerning it is that he's truly a focal point or a large piece of the offense come week one.
Yeah. Now, to stick on receivers, one that's a little different, and I'm only bringing this up because it seems to be a fairly common prediction that Rome Odunze is going to be wide receiver one for the Bears by the end of this year. Like I've seen that enough different places where I feel like there's at least a contingency of people believing that. Mm-hmm. But in every receiver drill that has come out, DJ Moore's the front of the line. Rome is second in line. Mm-hmm. Ron, do you think that? How do you think? Does that impact your thoughts at all on it, or do you think that? Or I guess to start off, did you think that Rome Odunze would become the Bears wide receiver one this year?
I think I'm a little less convicted in that camp that he's going to be the wide receiver one this year. I think just because nobody fully knows what these guys is like, what the roles are going to be and what's going to be asked of them, right? Like everybody's like, oh, so-and-so, like Rome Odunze is going to be the Amon-Ra. We already know that Ben Johnson is not bringing a carbon copy of his Detroit offense to Chicago. So these guys are probably going to have slightly variated roles compared to the Detroit iteration of Ben Johnson's offense. With that in mind, I think Rome Odunze certainly could become the wide receiver one just because of the pure athlete that he is. And he's maybe more the quote unquote true wide receiver, whereas like DJ Moore to me is like a receiver running back hybrid. He's a yak king, almost a Luther Burden-esque player.
So he's like Luther Burden.
Yeah. I mean, they're very much the same type of player. But obviously, DJ Moore, I think, more refined as an NFL receiver, obviously, and still a very good football player. I think a lot of that comes from a leadership perspective, too, though, when it comes to drills, because that is DJ Moore getting up there, knowing that he's working with, outside of Olamide Zaccheaus, and maybe you could make the argument for a guy like Devin Duvernay, this is a young receiver room. Right? Rome is a second-year player. Luther Burden's a rookie. Tyler Scott's only, a third or fourth-year player. Like, DJ Moore is whether he likes it or not, the leader of that room. And I'm sure Antoine Randall has been in his ear telling him, hey, man, I want you to be up there and be first in line for these drills and showing these guys what's up. Like, show them how to be an NFL receiver. And I think it's more so that and him being the veteran in the room than it is necessarily like, you're my wide receiver one, you're my wide receiver two. Because I'll tell you right now, I've been on teams where starters are the first couple guys in line in a drill, and sometimes starters are not. And it's just, a lot of times it's a leadership thing. It's the guys that are wanting to set an example and set the tone and bring that energy. And I think DJ Moore right now is just that guy in that room. And probably a lot of that is being asked upon from a guy like Antoine Randall as your position coach.
I think that's a good thing, frankly.
Absolutely.
Like, I would not doubt one bit, or I don't doubt one bit, that when Randall got hired, one of the first conversations he had was with DJ Moore about what the hell last year was and how that can't happen again. So to see him being that first step in line and accepting that leadership role, I'm excited about that. The fact that he's looking like that, and not, hopefully that drama from last year is not carrying over, because I mean, I can't even explain to you what the drama was. It was all just weird, right?
Yeah. And I think too, even with that drama, I think a large part of the fan base sat there and wondered, like, what the hell is this? We've never seen this from DJ Moore before. Like, at least not in his 2 seasons in Chicago. Like, we didn't see that in that first year.
The only answer we could come up with was, well, I guess he's never played on a winning team before. And like, maybe he is a bit more diva than we thought. It was just, he always got his targets.
Yeah. But I think that points to, once again, like, you got paid by the organization. They very clearly value you as a long-term part of the solution, right? And then on top of that, there is a huge difference when you got guys that played in the league and they're intense as coaches that come in and demand greatness out of their top players. And I agree with you. I think that was probably one of Randall's first conversations upon being named the wide receiver coach. Remember, he's also the assistant head coach as well. Like, he's got a lot of pull and a lot of respect in that coaching room as well. I think DJ Moore looks at that and says, you know what? You're right, Antoine. Like, I do need to be the veteran. I do need to set us a good example, because, we got a young receiver room and it's full of talent, but there needs to be an example for these guys to look up to. And he's that, like, by default, he is that guy, because Keenan Allen's not here anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if DJ Moore watched Antoine Randall growing up. They're pretty similar skill sets. Like, that there is some crossover there in the way they play football. So I wouldn't be surprised if they took a liking to each other pretty quickly from that. But let's move on to one of the more obvious position battles here. And we have like at least 3 people in this really for RB2. Because, I mean, it seems fairly clear from some of Ben Johnson's comments, I think today, that DeAndre Swift is the one. He's paid like the one. He's the only guy who's ever produced like a one. It just makes sense that he's the one. But behind him, you got some combination of Roschon Johnson, Kyle Monangai, Ian Wheeler, and then Travis Homer as well in there potentially. Like, how do you see this shaking out, Ron?
I think some of it will come down to the roles that these guys are going to be asked to play. I know everybody loves to comp the Roschon Johnson situation to what Jamal Williams was in 2022 under Ben Johnson as OC in Detroit. I really do believe, though, that it's going to come down to just who has the better camp. Like, does Roschon Johnson look like? Because remember, I mean, even Roschon Johnson in what we would largely consider maybe not as good of a running back draft as, for example, this year's was, he was still a 4th round pick. Like, that's pretty respectable draft capital, especially for a running back. I think he's going to be given every opportunity to kind of take the bull by the horns and earn that second job. But that being said, Monangai was a part of a potentially historic running back class. And even as a 7th round pick, I mean, I personally thought he was going to be like a 4th or a 5th round pick after watching his film. He could easily come out and prove that he's the better back. And we didn't even get to touch the surface of what Ian Wheeler was. He could come out of left field after missing the season with injury. I mean, they liked him enough to keep him around on the IR and in that building. They could have just released him if they didn't like him. They very clearly liked something with Ian Wheeler, and who knows, maybe he comes out of the woodwork and steals that running back 2 job. I mean, it's going to be fascinating, and it also just comes down to, I think, who Ben Johnson believes can produce the best behind DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I mean, with Wheeler even, I mean, I think you're talking about a 4.4 guy with speed-wise. I mean, I don't think there was ever a official 40 time for him. I think at the HBCU Combine, something says he ran like a 4.57, but he was faster. Like, he was faster than that in preseason last year. So, like, I do think you're talking about a legitimate speed threat with Ian Wheeler. And like you said, I do think there's a reason they kept him around. Meanwhile, I do get what you're saying from the Jamal Williams standpoint with like a Roschon Johnson. I don't think we're going to have any clue what Roschon Johnson is bringing to this team until they get pads on, at least. Because it's
100%.
just, he's not a guy who's going to look good outside of pads. You notice, I mean, I was looking up some news articles before this, some quotes. I haven't heard a dang thing about Roschon Johnson. And I shouldn't expect to. His running style is not conducive to no pads. Like, it's just, It doesn't track. And I've never been the biggest Roschon guy. Anyone who listens to this podcast regularly knows that. But I do think he does provide you some of that between the tackles toughness that you might be looking for to complement Swift. And Monangai, I mean, if I'm putting money on it, Monangai is probably getting by the end of the season second most carries is where my head's at. I think Roschon gets a decent amount of pass down work though.
I can see that too.
And I didn't watch as much Monangai as you. How did you feel about him in pass work?
I think in pass pro, he's a very willing pass blocker, and like that's the number one thing in my opinion a running back needs to have. Like, you don't need to be good necessarily, you got to at least be willing. Mm-hmm. And he's a very willing pass blocker. He's very, there's no like good word to describe this, so I'm just gonna make up one. He's very shoulder heavy in his pass blocking. It's not a lot of getting your hands on guys. It's throwing your body and your shoulder into players. He also wasn't really asked a ton to like true pass block like a Travion Henderson was at Ohio State, where it was a lot more like chipping off the end and going out on a route and things like that. So again, I think he's willing, and you can certainly teach him the technique to get better at it, especially from a guy like Bieniemy as their position coach. But he's willing, and he brings a thump. Like he's not just a guy that's like throwing a fake shoulder into somebody. Like, he comes flying downhill trying to take people out, and sometimes that's all you need, and you can coach some of that, the extra technique and drill work into it to make him a little more refined. So I really liked Monangai as a player. It's funny, Q. He's such a full circle player, I feel like, for this Bears on Tap podcast, because I did a show with Sonny, and I told him about, like, we were talking after the fact. And he's like, man, I'm telling you, like, watching about the amount of U of I football I watch, go watch Monangai from Rutgers. Like, that kid torched U of I. And I'm like, okay, I'll start there. So I watched 3 Monangai games. Like, as the first player I watched any film on in Building the Board, which you help execute so perfectly every single year. And I liked the player. I didn't necessarily think he was a top 100 player, so I never did a write-up on him. But I liked the player. And so when the Bears took him, I was like, wow, this is really weird. Like, there's no running back in this draft I watched more film on, maybe than the 2 Ohio State guys, than Kyle Monangai.
Yeah.
So I like the player. I really do. I think the one reason that he wasn't higher in the draft is just because I don't think he has like the true breakaway speed. But like, he's fiery and he runs hard. And I really think there's a lot to like there with the player. So I don't think your prediction of him being the number 2 in terms of carries, and maybe by the end of the season, he's your true number 2 back in the sense where you can trust him more in passing situations versus a Roschon Johnson. I don't think there's anything weird in that statement at all. I think that's very, very possible and potentially likely.
Well, and the reason I ask, because these guys ran pretty much the same 40 time. I think they bring you about the same level of explosiveness.
Yeah.
I think Monangai brings you more juice in the agility department.
I agree.
And better contact balance. Roschon.
Yes.
Roschon has fine contact balance for a power back, which needs to be, decently good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Monangai, that's one of his strongest traits is his contact balance and his, having that low center of gravity, like 5'8". Roschon is nearly 6 foot. Like that center of gravity is it's a tougher deal for him. Definitely. And I don't think Monangai is going to be busting through tackles the way Roschon can. But I do think he can provide some similar between the tackle stuff with a little better vision where he might not be taking on square tacklers as often.
Agreed. He's a very slippery runner. I think that's a good way to describe him. He's not the fastest guy in the world. You know what, Q? I hate to use the comparison, but it's the one that's going to resonate most with Bears fans. He's a poor man's version of David Montgomery.
Yeah.
Like he can run between the tackles. He's not nearly as shifty as Montgomery is in terms of agility, but in the sense of like he's a slippery runner. He doesn't take a full head of steam on in tackles like you mentioned. Like he gives you some of that craftiness in between the tackles with good vision that I just don't think Roschon supplies.
Yeah, no, I can see it a less explosive version because Monty's got that short area burst. That's real special.
When I say poor man, I mean real poor man. But you could watch both of their film and be like, I can see where you're drawing the comparison.
Yeah. Now, and anywhere else in the offense you want to talk about? A little Case Keenum, Tyson Bagent talk, or?
No, I think that does it for me, Q. It's kind of nice not having a nauseating amount of positioning battles.
Yeah.
And even the ones that we have, they're good position battles because most of them are depth, right? Like outside of the left tackle position, your third receiver having two guys that can absolutely be that guy and the other one's 100% going to get on the field even as a wide receiver 4, that's a great problem to have. In addition, with your running backs, you have 4 to 5 guys in that room that are worthy of a roster spot. That's a great problem to have. So it's nice and refreshing for once. It feels like with the state of the offensive side of the football that we don't have any glaring position battles that are like going to determine the fate of like the season, right? There is no holy shit. We need to figure out who our starting 5 linemen are. And we've only got 1 receiver and like, that's it. Like it's pretty settled. And, it's nice seeing a Dahlman and a Jackson and a Thuney and on the inside, man, of Wright and Jones. I'm already daydreaming of the O-line breakdowns we're going to do this season with those guys because I'm telling you right now, Q, I've watched a lot of Andy Heck film, some good cool clinics.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Joe Thuney in those, and I am in love with that dude's technique. So there's going to be a lot of I'm going to bring a bucket for my saliva when we talk Joe Thuney during our breakdowns this season.
Yeah, I was getting into some Jonah Jackson tape today, and I think I'm going to write an article just breaking down two different games I watched from him when he was with the Lions. Not this past year with the Rams because he barely played, but
back in 22.
Frankly, because I think Jonah Jackson is a really misunderstood football player. I don't think a lot of people have watched him very in depth. And I think you count on his PFF grades a lot, but his PFF grades are really deceiving because I see a guy who's probably a better pass blocker than a run blocker, but he is very good at a few specific things in run blocking. That's like you get him pulling in space. He is extremely good linear, like moving linear in linear positions. Sorry, I was struggling with that word. In linear ways as a puller out wide. I don't know if I want him really moving laterally very much because that's where he struggles a little bit. He struggles to get to cutoff blocks and guys can cross his face some. But in pass pro, he is so proactive with his hands and his power. His power is very upper body driven and very punch driven. But he does a lot of jump sets, gets right into guys and just knocks him back right off the snaps with such quick hands. I wasn't expecting that based on his PFF grades, right? I was expecting a mauler who moves people vertically, and that's not really what I saw So I'm excited to get some more tape out there on him, because I don't think there's a strong understanding of what Jonah Jackson is right now among Bears fans.
I think on top of it, though, it further shows that there was a very clear plan, in my opinion, of how the Bears attacked that interior three. And they looked at the free agent class and said, we know we're going to have a shot at Drew Dahlman, and that's the guy we want. And we're going to go pay him. But now we got to find two guys that are just absolute menaces in pass pro. Like, you're strong, you're proactive, and you can help protect a smaller center who's going to aid you in the run game, because that's what he does. And that's what Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson are. And I'm excited now. I need to dive into some Jackson film. I've seen a lot of Thuney, and I know what that dude brings. But
that's actually one thing that I'm really curious to see Jonah Jackson away from Frank Ragnow, because they did protect his inside shoulder a lot with Frank Ragnow. Like, when I was watching his tape, I said, if I'm a defensive line coach, I'm trying to force their slide away from Jonah Jackson so I can isolate him one-on-one with a guy who can cross his face. Like, that would be my number one goal in any 4-man pass rush, to try to like play games to get them to force their slide right, because he was playing left guard. So he doesn't have Frank Ragnow protecting his right shoulder. But so I'm curious to see how that plays out with Drew Dahlman. Because like I said, I did think Jackson showed a lot of really good stuff in pass pro, but that was what felt like his most glaring weakness. Was that guys crossing his face from his left shoulder to his right shoulder.
And maybe there's some of that they trust Drew Dahlman because he's a veteran to at least be adequate at being able to do some of that. So again, I really think they attacked that interior with like, these are the three we really want, and let's try to go get them. And I think they nailed it. Like, I think these were the three they wanted all along.
It's hard to imagine them doing a lot better than this.
Especially when you watch what some of these guards got in free agency that, in my opinion, are far inferior to players like Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney. I think they like, this was a very targeted, like, we know we're going to lose some draft capital getting these guys, but to get them at the price you got them, and the way they're going to complement a player like Dahlman. And then again, you've got two very capable tackles on the outside, like a night and day transformation. So it's just pleasant to see.
Now, one quick note, because we will have a very special episode coming next Tuesday.
Yes, we will.
The one and only Brandon Thorne joining our show to talk about the Bears O-line. I reached out to a few offensive line guys out there who cover the Bears, like a Jeff Burkus and Lester Wilfong, and Jeff gave me about what would they ask Brandon Thorne to get an idea of like what questions are we going to be throwing out there, because I had a few written out already, but I wanted to gauge other people's thoughts. And Jeff gave me a question that I thought was outstanding of, there's a lot of continuity that matters with O-line and familiarity. And how should we expect this as Bears fans to play out with a bunch of guys who have never played together? So I'm interested to hear his answer on that, because I do think that will be a factor the first half of the season at least.
Definitely. I feel like I have an answer to that too, but I'm curious to hear what Thorne has to say. But no, I think that's a great question, because it is more than any position group on the field. The chemistry of your O-line is critically important, because you need to be able to know what the guy next to you is going to do. And if that continuity gets disrupted, we've seen it over the course of the years with the Bears and how many different O-line combos they start. It looks a lot out of whack, and it's because guys just aren't used to playing next to each other and understanding who's good at what and who's not good at this, and who's got my back if I need to do this. And it's a lot of moving chess pieces when it comes to O-line continuity. So I too am excited to hear what Mr. Thorne has to say.
But now that we've sufficiently derailed our show into O-line talk, let's get back to our position battle.
I would have it no other way, Q, with you and I on the microphone. No other way.
Yeah. On the defense, where do you see spots that are up for grabs potentially?
I see a lot of spots up for grabs. I think the one I'm most intrigued by is the defensive tackle positions. And I'll say both of them, because I think we all know, like, Trevon Dexter is going to get used a lot, but it's with Billings and Turner and like what's left of Pickens and Grady Jarrett, who was a big addition, like, and the way Dennis Allen uses those guys, I am fascinated to see who gets the like what reps and how many of those reps. Because to me, that's a position battle. Like, are you the most trusted guy at that spot, or are you a secondary piece that Dennis Allen's going to work in the rotation? Like, are we going to see a heavy amount of Grady Jarrett and Javon Dexter, or are we going to see more Andrew Billings on first and second down? Right? Like, genuinely just excited to see what that group looks like and just how it shakes out in terms of the rotation. And I think, like, I say this with as much like just genuine feeling as I humanly can. Like, I think it's really a toss up outside of maybe Javon Dexter. I think the rest of that room, like, I know Grady Jarrett's going to be involved, but he's older. You know, Billings is a worthy player. Turner's a rookie. Pickens, we're still kind of waiting to see what happens with him because the curse of Ryan Poles' third round picks continues. I want to see. I want to see who wins majority of the snaps at those two positions.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some pretty unconventional alignments from a lot of these guys. And, you know, I mean, I think we're going to see Shamar Turner playing some zero tech at times just because I think Dennis Allen just thoroughly believes in bruising up the center. And if there's a guy out there who's just going to kick a center's ass, it's probably Shamar Turner because he just kicks people's ass. That's what he's there to do. He's not there to actually be good at football. He's just there to beat people up. Like, his college tape was borderline hysterical at times about it. Like, he's just hitting people,
just being a bully.
But from that same sentiment, though, your traditional nose tackle, Andrew Billings, I have not verified this, but I believe I've seen it where in New Orleans, Dennis Allen, there were times where he would put his nose tackle out to like a 4-eye because he just says, I know that this is your best run blocker and I know you want to run it here when you have to. So I'm putting my biggest guy right here and you have to try to move him with your tackle who's not as powerful as your guards. Like, so I do think we're going to see Andrew Billings out in some weird alignments at times on running downs where, like, why is he playing over the tackle? You know, like it might look weird, but I believe there will be purpose behind it. And I mean, I got to think Grady Jarrett and Dexter are your starters, but how the rest of this shakes out between Deo kicking inside, Turner and Billings, it's a lot of this camp's going to matter. Billings coming off, I believe, what was it, a torn pec last year?
Yeah,
it's not a cakewalk to come back from. So, like, I'm interested to see how he is doing in camp and what type of role he's able to carve out for himself if he's back to 100%. But sticking with the D line, the edge spot, I mean, I'm not even sure how much Deo's going to be playing inside because he's more of an inside type of body type. And then you just signed a guy who's not on this graphic, Tano Passanio. He's like the same body type as Deo. You know, he's like 290 pounds. So he's an edge who's like more like an undersized D tackle. I'm not sure what this second edge spot is really going to look like versus a lot of guys who end up playing inside.
I think the answer there might not be on the roster yet. And I know that's something that you and I have kicked around with some of our friends in the Bears community of, like, there's a lot of chit chat about like Zadarius Smith and Jadeveon Clowney and some of these other names that are still available as veteran edge guys, right? Where I don't need you every play. I just need you when it's third down and we need to rush the pass.
I need you when I need you.
Yeah, I need you when I need you. And like those guys at this point in their careers can absolutely fill that void for a couple $1 million. And they still have plenty of cap space where they could, you know, pay those guys respectably for one season. So I really do look at this, Q, and I say, I think that second edge spot, the real answer on passing downs is not on the roster yet. But I think the answer on running downs, I think we'll see a lot of Deo out there. I really do. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Shamar Turner out there at times on weird passing downs or short yardage if they really want to get goofy and give a different look. Because like we had on that incredibly fun show that we did of breaking down the Dennis Allen defense and how we'd react. We were like, oh, that's so-and-so. He's out playing the 9, which is odd because he's a D tackle. Like, we're going to see weird stuff. So I really do believe that's kind of just where it's at right now. Come July 24th, ask me again come, August 4th or 5th, and I think our answer might be a little different.
Guys who are out there. I mean, you got like Matt Judon, Preston Smith, who I didn't even realize Preston Smith was out there. I don't know if he's coming off an injury or anything, but like I'd be very interested in that. Zadarius Smith, Jadeveon Clowney, old friend DeMarcus Walker's still available, which is kind of a shock to me.
That is kind of a shock.
I mean, he had a good year last year. I don't know why he would still be available, but you got to figure those are the biggest names to watch here. Carl Lawson's still available, and I believe he did some stuff with Dallas last year, but not that's probably not the ideal name that you're looking for. But I was thinking they need to add some, but now that they added Passanio, I don't like that might be it. I'm not sure. Passanio is one of Dennis Allen's guys. He was with Dennis Allen the last 4 years in New Orleans.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Maybe he shocks people, because he put up respectable tallies in New Orleans. I mean, he
started in KC before that. Like he's been starting around the league for years.
Yeah, he's averaging, I think, 8 or it's like a sack every other game in terms of the amount of games he's started in his career.
Oh, is it that much?
I thought it was 16 sacks over like 39 games.
Let's see. Actually, I didn't even think it was that short. Yeah, 16 and a half over 34 starts, but he hasn't started consistently, really, ever.
So,
he had one season where he started over half the year.
Yeah. So I still think even he's a rotational piece at this point. I think there's one more name out there. I really do. I think they want this D-line to be as deep as humanly possible.
I do too, and I'm hoping that they I would love a Zadarius Smith edition here. I think that's ideal. Well, ideal is Clowney, but I do think you're gonna have to dish out a decent amount of cash for Clowney because historically you've had to. But I think Clowney is probably Dennis Allen's dream defensive end as far as a guy who can play all 3 downs and still bring a pass rush threat. But outside of that, I mean, I don't even think there's much of a battle at the sandbacker. I think it's just Hippolyte's to lose because he fast.
He's so fast he makes fast people look not fast.
Exactly. I don't know how good Hippolyte is at football. I still haven't watched his tape from Maryland. I probably won't.
I watched like 12 plays.
Yeah,
that's all I was able to get through with Hippolyte.
Yeah. I just think Dennis Allen wants one thing from his sandbacker, and that's be fast.
Mm-hmm.
Be fast and don't second guess things.
Yep, just fly around and use your instincts. I agree.
And it's not like he's going to be a guy who's playing a ton of snaps as a sandbacker. You're playing a handful of snaps a game, maybe. Right. You're more of a situational package player than anything. At linebacker, I do got to say, my ears perked up a little when Des Allen was talking about Tremaine Edmonds yesterday, where he said we expect him to be he didn't just say we expect him to be good or we expect him to make plays. We expect him to be an exceptional playmaker. He's setting that bar high for Tremaine. Mm-hmm. And I've said privately, I look at where Tremaine's played. I don't know that he's ever had a guy who coaches hard the way that Dennis Allen coaches. And that might not matter because a lot of the question with Tremaine has always been instincts. It's always been he's hesitant about everything and he doesn't play fast. But with a coach who's going to demand it, I'm curious to see if there's more there. If Dennis Allen can get that extra out of him for him to live up to his talents, even just a little more than he has.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think too, the way Dennis Allen uses his backers, as we have seen previously, those guys need to be athletes, and they're going to be freaks, and they're going to have opportunities on the football. Look at Demario Davis and how much opportunity he got on the football playing in a Dennis Allen defense down in New Orleans. They want Tremaine to be that guy, and Tremaine's arguably more of a freak athlete than Demario Davis was, right? He's longer, he's bigger. He takes up a lot of that middle of that field when they have those guys running off the line. I think it's fair to expect that too, because he got the big contract, and he's a guy that can be that difference maker on the defensive side, and hopefully a tough defensive coach like Allen is able to bring that out of him, because I mean, he was the 16th overall pick in the draft when he was drafted. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of excitement about the athlete and the player and the body that Tremaine Edmunds brings to the football field.
In Dennis Allen's own words, it is a privilege to play in this defense. And what does that mean, though? It means it's a fun defense. Like, you get to attack in this defense. He doesn't want you hesitating. He doesn't want you worrying about too much. He just wants you attacking certain specific areas. And as long as you're doing that, you get to stay on the field. You get to keep having that privilege of attacking and playing a very fun brand of football. It's going to give up yards and plays at times. Mm-hmm. That's Dennis Allen's defenses always have. But they also create big opportunities for the defense. Like, when I've been watching their tape, it's like, they'll give up a 50-yard touchdown sometimes. We really didn't see that a lot under the Eberflus defense. You didn't give up that many big explosives like that. Not that it's going to give up a ton, but they're going to happen a bit more frequently. But also the sacks are going to happen more frequently. The turnovers, the big plays, the plays for loss, they happen a lot more in this defense because you have players playing downhill fast football. And we've never seen Tremaine Edmunds truly do that. We've never seen him in a scheme that asks him to do it. But there are questions about whether that's in there.
100%.
And then I guess the only other spot that I think there's a question is CB2, which personally, I don't think there's much of a question here. But what do you think, Ron?
I don't think there's much of a question either, but who was it that was getting more work? Was it Nashawn Wright was getting work with the ones?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of fascinating too, because of, the players that we've seen in Terrell Smith and Blackwell, and Zoff Frazier is a player that Al Harris and company are very excited about too.
I believe Zay's hurt.
He is, yeah. Or I saw something that's personal reasons is why.
Oh, that's what it is. Team.
Yeah, personal reasons. So, but I think we know the starters, right? It's Reek, it's Jalen, it's Gordon, especially the way that Dennis Allen spoke about Kyler Gordon in the offseason. Mm-hmm. Like, that he's a big piece of this defense. I think what's more fascinating is that next line of corners generally. Like, I don't even think it's CB2. In my opinion, it's CB4. It's, is it Frazier? Is it Smith? Is it Blackwell? Like, that's a high praised rookie in Frazier, who may be a bit of a steal in the 5th round, and two guys that have reasonable NFL experience. I'm kind of interested to see how that position shakes out more maybe than CB2, because I think Stevenson is built for the Dennis Allen defense.
Me too. And I remember reading something that Bears CB coach, what's his name? Al Harris. Al Harris said, like, he wanted Tyreek Stevenson when he was with the Cowboys. And Tyreek Stevenson is the type of corner that he really likes. And one of his first calls when he joined the Bears was to Tyreek Stevenson, because he believes that he can get him to a place where he can really excel. So I think Stevenson's going to is going to get every opportunity here to start. Definitely. I think Terrell Smith is a square peg in a round hole in this defense, which is tough. Yeah. I think that he's a solid football player. I think he is a guy who can start in a zone heavy scheme that's going to ask him to play back and attack downhill. I don't think that's what Dennis Allen's defense wants him to do. And I think you ask him to start playing a lot more press man, he's going to struggle. So and maybe something changes. Maybe he trained differently this offseason to make himself better at that. But I do have questions about how Terrell Smith fits into this defense going forward. I know he's a very popular player among Bears fans. So that's why I'm putting this out there. I'm tempering my expectations for Terrell Smith within this defense.
Yeah. a great point that I tend to agree with, and you can see it too. And they brought in Zoff Frazier. He's a big corner that's lengthy, and he's built to play man press. And yeah, I think Terrell Smith might be a guy that we see as an unfortunate cut when we get to the start of the season, but a guy that's going to get picked up right away by somebody because
Matt Eberflus will sign him in 10 minutes.
Yeah, they'll flip spots, right? Yeah. Like he'll go back where Al Harris was, and he'll head down to Dallas and join Eberflus. So
he's great for Eberflus's defense. He fits that really well.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. But Ron, anything else you want to point out on the roster, on position battles, on anything before we close this thing out?
No, man, I think, I'm just happy where I'm already over the training camp stupidity of things, but I'm excited that we're ramping up. I mean, August is incredibly close, and man, I'm just ready for football. I'm ready to get back on pregame shows with you and Sonny, and post-game shows and our O-line breakdowns, and get into the flow of fall, man, because I'll tell you what, I love summer. I've always loved summer. I always will love summer, but man, fall is my favorite time of the year. And football technically starts in the summer. Let's be real. Like, it's technically still very much summer when the season starts, right? We got till toward the end of September. But this is just my favorite time of the year, man. It's hard not to get excited about what's to come.
It is. And I was just thinking about this the other day after the stretch that we've had as Bears fans. And as rough as last year was on all of us, man, that 4-2 start, that was like pure gold. That was just such a needed, September was nice.
Boost. Yeah, it was a nice boost to the start of the year.
After the last few years where it was like September is just like in the doldrums. Now last year, October to November was the doldrums, but it's just about when the grieving process occurred. But it was nice to delay it for a month. And hopefully this year we can delay it for the full season. We'll see. But speaking of our game previews, we also do have a surprise for you guys on the way on who's going to be joining our preview shows this year. So look out for that in the future. We're not going to announce it now, but coming up, we will have a nice surprise for you guys on our preview shows. But Ron, until our next episode, why don't we get out of here the only way we know how?
Bear down, baby.
Bear down.